Hey there, this is Natalie, and I've got some more interesting stories for you from Reddit. Remember to subscribe if you like having plenty of new stories to listen to, always read by my real human voice instead of an AI. Now, let's get into the first story. Here's a story where it definitely sounds like something shady's going on, and it's entitled, I, 28 female, found out my husband, 29 male, has been telling his co-workers that I'm his sister. What do I do? Please help. And this was originally posted to r/relationship advice just 3 days ago, though there is already an update. The user is on a throwaway account and it's throw-ra-takeaway-CRA, and she begins. Throwaway account because I don't use or understand Reddit, but I really need advice from someone not connected to me or my husband. My husband, I'll call him Josh, and I have been together for 6 years, married for 4, and we don't have any kids. We have a really healthy and communicative relationship. We're both pretty easygoing, and I really love him. He started working at a large accounting firm about 3 years ago, and from what he tells me, he loves it there. He's made a lot of friends through his job, and he goes out with them for drinks and social events quite often, and I've been totally okay with that. I'm quite introverted, so I've never been interested in meeting his colleagues or work friends, nor have I asked to. I've got my own circle of friends, and I'm fine with us having separate friend groups. After what happened yesterday, it only just occurred to me that he's never actually asked me if I'd like to meet any of them or go to one of his work events. I guess that's important context. Anyway, I'll start with what happened a few months ago that I had brushed off until now. I was at a bar with some friends for a couple of Friday after-work drinks, and a guy approached me. He was there with some friends too. He looked slightly familiar, but I hadn't met him before. He seemed friendly enough, and he asked me, my name, right? I think I must have just given him a confused look, because he followed up with, I'm Jake, I work with Josh. I realised that I recognised him from some photos on my husband's phone. I don't use social media except for a private Instagram, so I'm not sure if he posted the photos anywhere, but I've got a very trusting relationship, so I look in his photos sometimes. Don't hate me. This is where it gets a bit embarrassing. I'm a bit socially awkward, and so I struggled to end the conversation, but he just kept talking at me. I guess he was already a couple of beers deep. But while he was talking, he said something like, it's great that you guys are still so close. I haven't talked to my brother in ages. At the time I was like, huh? But I just assumed he was drunk and not making sense, so I ignored it. He started to get a little flirty, so I turned to my friends and we left shortly after that. I didn't say anything to them about it, and it didn't seem like a big deal to me. I also decided not to tell my husband that I'd met his co-worker Jake. Not to hide it, but because I figured the guy wouldn't even remember talking to me, and I didn't want to make it awkward for Josh at work by telling him his colleague tried to hit on me. I just thought, no harm, no foul. But yesterday morning, I was out walking our dog, Monty. He's a cross between a few breeds and has very unique markings. This matters, I promise. And was on my way to my regular cafe, which is in town. I was waiting in line to order, and the guy in front was an older man. He got his coffee and turned around, but stopped and looked at my dog and goes, hello, Monty. Monty was super excited to see him apparently, so I guessed that the guy was another colleague of Josh's, because Josh brings the dog to the office a couple of times a week. I thought it was sweet, to be honest, so I smiled at him and said hi. He introduced himself. I guessed correctly that he was a colleague, but then he said something like, aren't you a good sister, walking his dog for him? I was so confused that I didn't even know how to react at first, so I stumbled on my words and just said, it's my dog. I regret it, but I genuinely couldn't bring myself to correct him and say that I'm Josh's wife and not his sister. It was just too awkward, and I just wanted to leave, because I think it was suddenly dawning on me what might have been going on. He asked me something about sharing a dog, but I was able to escape the conversation by being next in line to order my coffee, and he left. I seriously don't know what to do, because what the frick? Do I even ask my husband about this? Part of me is just assuming or hoping that it's a mistake, that he doesn't talk about me much at work, and they assume we're related, because we both have brown hair. But the thought that he's been telling his co-workers that I'm his sister, and evidently they've seen what I look like, so they must have seen photos, makes my stomach churn. I don't even know how I would broach the subject with him. I need some help. What would you guys do in this situation? I've only told one friend what happened because it's so weird and embarrassing, and she's just jumped straight to time to plot his downfall because she's my ride or die. Love her. But I don't want to immediately assume the worst or ruin my marriage over something that could be nothing. I'm sorry for the long and rambly post, but I would really appreciate any and all advice. And she adds a bit more information in an edit, where she says, "Holy frick, thank you everyone who commented with some advice. I haven't read them all, but I really appreciate the suggestions from you guys. A small update. Josh came home at about 2:30 a.m. last night, but he was drunk, so he just went straight to sleep, which is fine by me because frick having this conversation in that state. I've just woken up, but he's still sleeping. First thing I just want to clear up, I've seen a lot of people suggesting I have crippling social anxiety or am severely introverted, which I suppose you could glean from the way I explained what happened, but I'm not. I mean that I'm slightly introverted in that I'm not the most eager to meet lots of new people at once, especially a bunch of finance bros whose weekends consist of unending sports bar beers, where I assume I would be mansplained everything until my ears bleed. Probably a negative assumption, but I'm sure some of you know what I mean. I suppose you could say that I'm confrontation averse, in that I'm quite laid back and prefer to keep a conversation easy and polite. I don't know. I don't like it when things are awkward, and correcting when people misrecognize me is one of those things, but I'm also not terrified of confrontation. Also, my husband and I do share some mutual friends. I didn't explain that well, but our lives are not entirely separate. The way he acts towards me around our mutual friends is extremely affectionate and normal. It's only his work friends that I've never interacted with. I've also seen some people suggest that what is going on is equivalent to my husband beating me and me hopelessly wondering whether I should break up with him, or that I'm stupid for thinking my relationship was healthy when it clearly isn't. Like, damn, cut me some slack. I'm a real person, and this is an entirely alien and bizarre situation for me. My first reaction wasn't to assume the worst, but I do appreciate that you've all made me certain that it is a big deal. I guess I needed confirmation that the things that happened are enough proof that Josh has been purposefully lying, and they weren't just mix-ups. I'm going to talk to him today and ask him directly why he's telling his co-workers that I'm his sister. I followed the advice of writing my points down so they don't get lost if I get emotional, lol. I will do my best not to let him slither out of it, and I hope he has some proof that his colleagues know I'm his wife. I know that's not the theatrical confrontation you guys were hoping for, but it's a Saturday, and I can't wait. Wish me luck. Thank you all. And the update, which was posted yesterday at the time of recording this video, which is the 20th of August 2024, begins, "Hi everyone, I just wanted to say thank you for the overwhelming amount of support and advice. I'm blown away, and it really means a lot and has kept me grounded. I'm sorry for the slow update. I know a lot of you were interested in what happened. I actually tried to update on Saturday, but it turns out this subreddit doesn't allow me to post an update until 48 hours after my first post. I'm only allowed to post one single update, so I'll try to fit as much as I can here. I'm sorry for how long it might end up getting. I'll just get right into it. On Saturday morning, I woke up earlier than my husband. He was very hungover, so he was like sleeping like a rock. But you guys will be proud of me, because I followed some advice and decided to look through his phone properly while he was sleeping. I've been on his phone so often, just messing around on it, that I'd never thought to check anything very deeply. I know his passcode by heart. I checked all the expected things like Instagram DMs, Facebook Messenger, his iMessages, etc., and I didn't find anything that set off alarm bells to me. But I know from some comments that people who are cheating are good at covering their tracks and hiding messages, so I kept looking around. I saw he had a folder called Work, and so I looked in there, and he had a couple of Microsoft apps, Outlook, Authenticator, OneNote, etc., but he also had MS Teams. So I opened that up and had a look around. It did feel like I might have been breaking laws looking into his work messages, but I obviously had to. Anyway, I was already upset to see that he had a bunch of one-on-one chats with several female co-workers, which at first glance is obviously not an issue, because everyone works with people of the opposite gender and are required to communicate with them, but a couple of them were vaguely flirty. Nothing I would call egregious, but there would be the occasional message between them with some playful innuendo or a wink emoji. These upset me, obviously, and they did send me into a bit of a spiral, but I didn't find anything that was suggesting he was having an out-and-out affair with any of them. Still, I followed someone's suggestion of screenshotting the messages and I airdropped them to myself. I still wanted some evidence of the lie though, some proof of Josh telling someone that I was his sister directly. A commenter suggested that I go through his messages and search for the keyword sister. I wanted to reply to your comment and say thank you for the idea, but the post was locked, so I couldn't, but thank you. So I searched for sis on his MS Teams, hoping to find results for both sister and sis. A bunch of messages from all hands group chats and one-on-one chats came up from other people, all unrelated and about their own sisters or whatever. But my heart dropped out of my arse, lol, when I saw that there was a direct message from Jake, the guy from the bar, to Josh from a Monday a few months ago. Jake's message said, "Ran into your sis at the bar on Friday. She's single, right?" And my husband had the effing gall to reply, "Nah, she's married." I literally almost burst into flames on the spot when I saw that, and I can't even describe how much I was shaking after reading those messages. Firstly, that I could have confronted Josh about this months ago. I was, and still am, so furious with myself for that. Josh would have been effing praying I didn't remember meeting Jake, or that I wouldn't mention it, and he would have been counting his lucky stars that I never did. He probably thought that he was hot shit for getting away with that, and I nearly burnt a hole through the floor thinking about it, lol. But secondly, I was just in shock that he had the balls to tell this guy I'm the one who's married, because he doesn't want anyone having it on with me, but he is allowed to coyly flirt with every effing woman in the office. Anyway, I kept going back through the search results on his MS Teams, and eventually I got as far back as 2-ish years ago, and I did in fact find a message from Josh's self to a group chat. It said, "Me and sis in Nusa Dua." I clicked on that and saw that he had sent it alongside a bunch of photos of him and I from our holiday to Bali. We went to Bali for our second anniversary. I thought he probably chose these photos because he's shirtless and had been working out, so he looked hot in all of them. I was in tears seeing all of this, obviously. I took screenshots of those too and airdropped all of the screenshots to myself. Needless to say, I was devastated, and still am, to see all of that. I'm still struggling to even process it all. But that all happened on Saturday morning, and I immediately took myself to my friend's house. I'll call her Sophie. I went to her place to cry it out and show her what I'd found, and she was extremely supportive, and probably more furious than me, lol. At around 1:30 PM I got a phone call from Josh, and I hung it up immediately. He sent me a few messages along the lines of, "Where are you, baby? I'm ordering food. Want some? Sad to not wake up next to you this morning. Sad face." Guys, I have to reiterate how much I loved this man and how effing heart-wrenching it was to see him still acting like nothing had gone wrong. It took so much willpower to not just pretend none of it had ever happened and go home to him. I know a lot of you will yell at me or accuse me of being terrified of confronting him about this, which is not true. Please have some empathy. It takes me time to process my emotions, and I wouldn't have even been able to form a sentence if I tried to confront him immediately after seeing those messages. I needed some time away with Sophie to recollect myself, and so I stayed the night at her place. She ordered us Chinese, and she helped me plan how I would confront him. I got a bunch more texts and calls from him as the evening progressed, and I eventually put my phone on Do Not Disturb. Sunday, I woke up feeling more angry than sad, so I opened my phone and finally replied to his messages. "Coming home now, need to talk." I kept it cryptic to make him squirm, to be honest. Because I was/am fraught with emotions, I can't remember the entire conversation word for word, but I'll try to replay it as best I can. Long story short, I got home and he tried to hug me, but I refused him and we just stood in the kitchen. I did confront him like someone suggested. I just said, "Why have you been telling your coworkers I'm your sister?" I wish it would have been like a movie scene where the colour drained from his face or he immediately looked like a deer in the headlights, but he didn't. It was like he'd just been girding himself for this conversation for a while, because he just frowned at me and looked flabbergasted. He said, "Huh?" This made me so angry. How are you going to pretend to be stupid after 3 years of lying? I basically said, "Don't play frickin' dumb with me. 2 of your co-workers have greeted me as your sister, and I have proof of you telling them, and I know you're pretending to be single." Essentially, I asked him what he had to say for himself. He still played stupid. He became moderately defensive and just kept saying, "I don't know what you're talking about," or "Why would I lie about you?" I cannot describe how furious I was at this point, but I was in tears. I always cry when I'm angry. So he was trying to comfort me as if I was having some kind of irrational breakdown. I showed him the screenshot of his message saying, "Me and sis," and I said something like, "You tell me." He said, "I don't know what I'm looking at, and I'm confused." I got so angry that I left again and went back to Sophie's because it felt like a dead-end road. I didn't think I was going to get him to admit to anything, and I was just getting so furious I couldn't continue. He was really upset and in tears, which to me was evidence that he knew he was lying and that he was going to have to come up with some explanation. He tried to get me to stay, but I told him that until you have something to say for yourself, we've got nothing to talk about. At like 8:30ish, he called me again, and I did pick up. He basically asked for us to talk, and he said he has some things to say, so I went back to our apartment. He'd written out a bunch of stuff on a piece of paper, as if he'd prepared a speech, and sat me down on the couch. He asked me not to say anything while he was explaining himself. I'll write down the gist of what he said in bullet points. He started by apologising relentlessly and admitting that he pretended to be stupid before because he couldn't immediately think of something to say for himself. He said that immediately after he started his job, he realised the atmosphere was like a frat house. All of his team members were men in their 20s and 30s that were single and F-boys, his word. He noticed that the one guy in their team that was married would either get picked on or essentially excluded from any and all social interactions. That included getting lunch, inside jokes, going out on Friday, etc. These guys were friendly and welcoming to Josh, and he admitted that he was desperate to fit in with them. He hated feeling like fresh meat. So he was scared that saying he was married would alienate him from his co-workers, and at first just never mentioned that he was married. He said he did wear his wedding ring and that they'd just never pointed it out. Anyway, he said that from then he basically dug himself a deeper and deeper grave because they kept grilling him about me and wanting to see more pictures of me. He said he'd let it go on too long and he didn't have the balls to admit to the lie. They would always bring me up and ask shit like, "Did you give her my number yet?" or joke that they'd slept with me, etc. So when he got that message from Jake, he essentially thought it was just him taking the piss, but he didn't like the jokes they were making about me and said that I was married in hopes they would stop. They didn't. He said that this wasn't the first time he told them I was married. In fact, he'd said so pretty much immediately after saying I was his sister. He said that those pictures of us in Nusa Dua were the only pictures that he'd purposefully sent them and deliberately lied about, after what he called an endless barrage of pestering from his colleagues to share the pics from his holiday. He said he was really ashamed that he did that. He told me that he'd never had an affair or even considered it, that the messages between him and his female colleagues were banter, and that it was commonplace to talk to people like that in the office. He also said he knows how disgusting it is, and he's embarrassed to have been acting like an F-boy. Again, his word. He concluded his speech by apologising again, and said that he was disgusted with himself and ashamed that he'd lied for so long, but he felt like he'd trapped himself and that he couldn't find a way to get himself out of it. He said he knows he could have confessed the truth to either his co-workers or to me at any point, but that he didn't because he was a coward. He said that he'll confess to his entire office that he lied and that I'm his wife and not his sister if I want him to. He said that he'll quit his job without a word if it would make me feel better, and that he hopes I can forgive him, but he understands if I can't. Anyway, I couldn't really think of anything to say at that point. He went to lock himself in the bathroom and I just sat on the couch crying. I still don't know if I can trust what he said, and a lie that extreme is just baffling to me. If he can lie like that for so long, what else could he be lying about? But his explanation and apologies seem so sincere and genuine, and I guess to an extent what he said is believable. He's always been extroverted but very susceptible to peer pressure, especially from other blokes. If nothing else, to me it's a sign of shocking immaturity. Anyway, I packed up a bag and went to Sophie's, and I'm still at her place as I'm writing this. She said I can stay as long as I need to. I told Josh that I needed time away from him to think about everything and whether or not I believe him, or whether I can ever trust him again. He told me to take as long as I needed, and that he'll still be there if or when I get back. He said, even if it takes a year. Right now, nothing feels real. I'm still dealing with the emotional whiplash from all of this, and I can't keep food down or think about anything. I've taken the day off work, and Josh told me he's going to take off the whole week. Sophie and my other friends have told me not to make a decision on anything until my head is clear. I spoke to my parents this morning, and my mum says it's just a bump in the road. But she and my dad adore Josh, so they're pretty biased, lol. That's where I am right now. I'll take some time before I consider my next steps. I can't say whether I'm leaning towards forgiveness or divorce, but those are really the only options. I kind of feel lost in a void at the moment. That's probably the best way to describe it. Just emptiness. Thanks again for all your advice and support. I'm truly so grateful, and having this place to write down all of my thoughts has been helpful to get my mind a little clearer. This will be my last update, unless I make an edit to clear things up. All the best. Heart emoji. Now with this one, I think it all really depends on whether what Josh said is true. I mean, I've worked in those kinds of offices before. Not in finance, but I used to be an IT consultant, and sometimes the client sites were finance related or similar kinds of places anyway, where there's a lot of young guys whose social lives really do kind of revolve around work. And you want to be part of the gang and get invited to everything and included in all the jokes, especially when you first start somewhere new. So you might want to seem like a fun single person rather than their idea of what a married person is like, as in someone with commitments where they're not going to be able to come along for everything. And probably have a lot more going on outside of work, so don't necessarily want to be available to hang out with work colleagues at weekends and evenings. Given he and his wife seem to have a pretty laid-back kind of life together and she's fine with him going out all the time, he could accommodate being that kind of person and that kind of work friend, while also, being married and having a good relationship with his wife. So I can see when he first met those people why he might just want to not give them that piece of information that they might judge him on and exclude him from things on. His mistake would be saying that she was his sister when they saw a picture of him with a woman instead of saying, oh, it's my girlfriend or something. That could later be sort of parlayed into wife, as the time that he knew these people and how well he knew them wore on. I can also see the messages with the female co-workers probably are just banter. It's not for everyone, but things do get like that when you work in those kind of close-knit groups. And again, where the people you work with are also people you see socially. At the time I was working in those kinds of places and, dating guys from those kind of places too, because they were the people I met. This sort of situation probably wouldn't have happened to me because I was always really keen to meet their co-workers and kind of try and network with them and everything at the time. But if the wife is someone with her own circle of friends that she's happy with and she's not really interested in socialising with his co-workers, I'm guessing she works in a completely different industry and there would just be no benefit to her doing that aside from maybe getting to know some people that Josh works with so that she can, understand his stories better. Yeah, I can really see how this could happen and he could end up digging himself deeper and deeper without actually doing anything like cheating or intending for people to think he's single so that he could cheat. But at the same time, if you're from outside of those kind of environments, it does look very sketchy. And I think she's going to have some trouble trusting him in the future. There's also the case that he's not telling the truth and he is pretending to be single so that he can flirt with women and, maybe things have happened on work nights out with some of these girls. I think for them to move forward, I don't think he should have to do anything as extreme as leave his job, given he does seem to really like it there and, presumably it's been a good move for his career. She didn't really have any problems with his job before this situation, and it's not really his co-workers who've done anything wrong. But I think he should have to come clean to the co-workers and bring her along so that they can meet her. It could all become a funny story between them all, and once she knows these people, she might be able to regain her trust about Josh when he's with them. But again, that is assuming he's telling the truth. Another reason I would suspect that he is telling the truth is that he has no problem with her going through his phone. Yes, you wouldn't normally expect that your partner, if you're the kind of person who lets your partner, borrow your phone to do things and, you don't really care if they go through your messages and stuff, then, you expect they're not going to really look in your work folder. But I think you'd be a lot more cagey if you were doing anything sinister or, there was anything in that work folder that was worse than just a bit of winky face emoji at the end of a work email or something like that. I don't know, I am tempted to believe Josh. I think if I was in her situation, I would probably believe him, but I would want to, like I said, get to know his co-workers, make sure everybody knows where I stand. At this point, he's been there for 3 years, so it's not like he's going to get excluded from the regular activities now. And it could be that in order to, keep things the way that she can feel comfortable with, she might have to go to the trouble of sort of getting to know some of these people just to set her own mind at rest. Because otherwise she may still feel paranoid for as long as he works there. And if he changes jobs, yes, he could start again with a bunch of new co-workers and say he's married from the start. But, will that really be enough to stop her being concerned about what he's telling his co-workers about her? I do wonder how different she'd feel if instead of lying he'd just never said anything about her or had any pictures of her at all. Because a lot of people really don't share anything about their home life or private life with the people they work with. I've had people I used to go out with regularly, at work, and you'd later find out, they had children that they'd never mentioned and things like that. Some people just keep all the different social groups in their lives separate. So I do wonder whether what she needs is the reassurance that he is not in any way suggesting that he's single while he's at work, or whether it's the fact that he came up with what seems to be an elaborate lie, although it was just a lie that got deeper and deeper from the sounds of it. He also claims he kept his wedding ring on, so it really doesn't seem like it was a lie that he was that committed to them believing. It really just seems like he might have just said it off the cuff once, and then it became a thing as he got to know the people better and it went on over time. I don't know, I don't want to sound too much like I'm just siding with the boyfriend here, because clearly he has hurt her feelings. But if, and only if, he's telling the truth, then I absolutely think she should forgive him, but they should try to find a way to move past the situation so that he's not lying to his co-workers anymore. And I do think that can be done in a way that everybody will find funny. He doesn't have to look like, he's been sneaky in some way at work, or he's been doing it to, have a chance of being creepy to female employees or anything like that, if he's telling the truth and that's not the case. But what do you guys think? Let me know down below. And that's it for this video, but there are plenty more to check out on the channel, and if you watch them, it really helps me out, where I need many, many watch hours to get this channel monetized. Thanks for watching this one, and I hope to see you again very soon.